Aesop's Fables, Part 2. The Boy Who Cried Wolf. There was once a boy who loved to play tricks. The people of the village grew so tired of his antics they sent him to guard the sheep. Go on, up the hill by yourself and think about the misery you've caused us. It was so boring up there, away from everything. He had an idea. He cupped his hands to his mouth. Wolf! Wolf! The people came running. The boy sniggered. A few days later, wolf! Wolf! Again the people came. How the boy laughed. When they had gone, he thought, I'll leave it a while before I try that trick again. The very next day, out of the forest, his jaws dripping, slunk a wolf. Wolf! Wolf! Cried the boy. Wolf! Down in the village the people looked at one another, shook their heads and said, he must think we're idiots. At the end of the day, when he did not return, they went in search of him. They found neither boy nor sheep, just wool and blood and bones. The lion's share. A fox and a donkey went hunting with a lion. After a tremendous chase, the three of them killed a stag. Now came the time to divide the meat. The lion said, Donkey, you share it out. The donkey gave a third to the lion, a third to the fox and kept a third for himself. There. That's fair. The lion looked at the portions before him and, damn. Quick as a flash the donkey was dead. The lion, now, fox, it's your turn. I wonder if you can do better. The fox said, see this big heap? It's yours. See this tiny one? It's mine. Very good, said the lion. Tell me, why did you share this way? I was taught by a good teacher, said the fox. Oh yes, said the lion. Who was your teacher? The fox said, the donkey. Of mice and cats. Once upon a time, all the mice of the world got together for a great meeting about the problem of cats. All of them agreed something had to be done. Wherever mice lived, cats were attacking them and eating them. It was a worldwide epidemic. One suggestion after another was made. The air was full of squeaking as each idea was discussed, but no idea seemed to be good enough. Then one mouse jumped to his feet. Listen. I've got the answer to the problem, it's simple. All we have to do is this. We steal a ribbon, and then with it we fasten a bell around the neck of our enemy, the cat. That way whenever she comes close we'll hear the tinkling of her bell and we can run and hide in our holes. There was a thunder of applause. Tens of thousands of mice clapped their pink paws together. Everyone agreed it was an excellent idea. Everyone agreed that it was the best possible solution. But then a wise old mouse got up to his feet. This is indeed an excellent plan, save only for one tiny detail. What's that? Who will volunteer to tie these bells around the necks of every cat in the world? Raise your paws if you'd be happy to bell a cat. A terrible silence settled on the mice then, and not one paw was lifted. The old man, boy, and donkey. An old man and his grandson were leading their donkey to market. They passed a couple of men who said, look at those idiots, leading that donkey when they could be riding it. The old man looked at the boy. They stopped. The boy got on the donkey and they set off. They passed two women who said, look at that boy, he rides up there like a king while his old grandfather has to walk. The boy looked at the old man. They stopped. The boy got off the donkey and the old man got on. They set off. They passed a couple. The man said to his wife, "Poor lad. Look, see, he's practically a slave. That old man makes him trudge the roads while Granddad lords it on the donkey." The old man and the boy looked at one another. They frowned. Then they both climbed on the donkey. "Look at the way they treat that poor donkey," said the passers-by, "it's staggering under the weight of them." The old man and the boy stopped. They climbed down. Then they tied the donkey's legs together and carried it. As they crossed the bridge, the donkey got a leg free and kicked the boy. The boy dropped the donkey. The donkey fell in the river and drowned. "Silwar, talk about stupid," said a passerby. What were they thinking of, carrying a donkey? The slave and the lion. Once upon a time a poor slave was very badly treated by his master. He was beaten and starved, and so he ran away. He knew that if his master caught him he would be killed, so he decided the safest place to hide would be somewhere in the middle of a great hot sandy desert. As he wandered about the desert in search of food and shelter, he came to a cave. It seemed to be empty and he entered it. He sat down on a rock. And then suddenly from behind him there was a roar. He looked over his shoulder and saw an enormous lion. He closed his eyes and made ready to die. But the lion didn't spring on him. It came forwards whining and fawning. The slave saw it was lifting one of its paws. The lion put its foot onto the slave's knee. It was swollen and sore. The slave lifted it gently and examined it. There was a large thorn embedded in the ball of the foot. Carefully, the slave pulled out the thorn. He cleaned the wound and bound it with a piece of cloth torn from his own tunic, and soon the wound healed. From that day onwards the lion treated the slave as a friend. Every day he would go out hunting and bring back food. The slave would make a fire and cook the meat. They would sleep side by side in the firelight. After several months though, the slave began to long for human company. He said goodbye to the lion and made his way across the desert to a city. As he approached the city, it so happened that his old master was riding along the same road. When he saw his lost slave he shouted, "Seize him! Seize him!" The slave was captured and condemned to death. "And it won't be a pretty death," said his master, "you'll be thrown to a wild beast. You'll be eaten alive." At the end of the week he was brought to the arena. A great crowd had gathered to watch. In a cage there was an enormous lion, pacing to and fro, roaring and growling. The slave was thrown into the arena. The door of the cage was opened. But to the people's amazement the lion, as soon as he saw the slave, bounded across to him like a huge tame cat, rubbing himself against him and purring. The slave stroked the lion's head and back. The lion licked the slave's cheek, as though he was a kitten. The lion had recognized his old friend. The spectators were amazed. They started shouting, "Spare his life! Spare his life!" And the governor of the city, when he heard the story, marveled at such gratitude in a wild beast and ordered that both slave and lion should be set free. The town mouse and the country mouse. Once upon a time a town mouse and a country mouse were friends. One day the country mouse invited the town mouse to come and visit him in his home out in the fields. They sat down to dinner. The country mouse served his friend a plate with an ear of wheat on it and a little carrot, fresh from the garden. The carrot still had tiny crumbs of soil on it. The town mouse nibbled the carrot and spat out the soil, nibbled the wheat ear and spat out the chaff. He wrinkled up his nose in disgust. My poor dear friend. Is this the best you can do? You live no better than the ants. Now, you should see how well I live. My larder is stocked with the finest food. Come and visit me and you'll nibble such tasty dainties as you've never dreamed of. So the country mouse went to visit the town mouse. The town mouse welcomed him with open arms. Come with me and I'll show you shelf upon shelf of wonders. He followed his friend under the larder door and gasped with amazement. There was fine white flour and oatmeal and figs and fruit and cheese and biscuits. Help yourself. They climbed up onto a shelf and were just about to nibble at a big piece of yellow cheese when the larder door opened. Quick! Someone was coming in, a human. They scuttled away as fast as their legs would carry them and crouched in a very uncomfortable crack in the wall. When the human was gone, they crept out again. Now, as I was saying, said the town mouse, before we were so rudely interrupted, help yourself. The country mouse curled himself around a nice fat fig and was just about to sink his teeth into it when, quick! Another human. Hide! They ran again and hid in the same hole. The human reached for the figs. The country mouse could almost feel its hand against his whiskers. When the human was outside and the door was closed, they heard it speaking, I'm sure I heard a mouse in the larder. Let's fetch old Tabby. It's a while since she earned her keep. The country mouse's heart was pounding. He turned to his friend. Goodbye. I'm off. My simple plate of food nibbled in peace tastes much sweeter than all your fancy dainties. And the country mouse ran all the way back to his home in the fields. The sun and the north wind. Once upon a time, the north wind and the sun had an argument. Each thought he was stronger than the other. There's only one thing for it, said the north wind. We'll have to put our strength to the test. We'll have a competition. He pointed to a traveler, walking along a road far below them, on the face of the world. See that man? The sun nodded. See the coat he's wearing? Yes, I can see his coat. Well, whichever one of us can strip the coat from his back will have proved himself the strongest. The sun smiled and nodded. Very well, wind. You go first. So the north wind began to blow. He came whirling down out of the sky and set the man's coat flapping, so the traveler buttoned it up. He blew harder, as though he could tear it from the man's back, but the traveler thrust his hands into his pockets and held the coat closer. He blew with all of his strength, but the traveler bent himself against the wind and held his coat tighter still. For all his puffing and panting, the wind could do nothing. Then it was the sun's turn. The wind stopped, the clouds parted, and the sun shone. He shone gently at first, so the traveler relaxed his stride and unfastened his buttons. Then the sun shone more fiercely, the traveler took off his coat and slung it over his shoulder. Then the sun shone with all of his strength, the traveler threw his coat onto the ground and sat under the shade of a tree. The sun turned to the north wind. So, who's stronger? You or me? The divided body. Once upon a time the arms and the legs became angry with the belly. It's not fair. We do all the work, walking, lifting, carrying, climbing, making, shaping, and the belly does nothing. he just sits there. And he gets rewarded with all the food and drink. And what do we get? Nothing. We're no better than slaves. And to make things worse, it's us who give the belly his nourishment, tramping the fields, lifting the food to his mouth. And do we get any thanks for our trouble? Not a word. It's time we taught the belly a lesson. Let's go on strike. From now on he can look after himself. And so the arms and the legs left the belly to starve. The legs wouldn't walk out to fetch food. The arms wouldn't lift and carry. And after a few days the arms felt themselves growing weaker and weaker. The legs trembled and couldn't stand any longer. With an empty belly, the body began to fail. Too late, they understood that it is the belly that gives them the strength they need. The farmer's daughter. Once upon a time, a farmer's daughter had been out to milk the cows. She was returning to the dairy, carrying a bucket full of milk on her head. As she was crossing the field she started thinking to herself, I shall skim the cream from this bucket of milk and churn it into butter. Then I'll take the butter to market and sell it. With the money I make I'll buy a dozen eggs, I'll keep them warm and they'll hatch into chicks. The chicks will grow into good brown hens and when they're nice and fat I'll sell the lot of them. And with the money I make I'll buy myself a new dress, it'll be red and green with yellow ribbons. I'll wear it for the fair and all the boys will crowd around me, trying to catch my eye, but I'll be so grand I'll have nothing to do with them. I'll toss my head and turn away. But the farmer's daughter was so lost in her thoughts that she really did toss her head. Down fell the bucket, out spilled the milk and all her dreams soaked into the grassy ground. Fields of gold. Once upon a time a farmer was dying. His last thoughts were for his sons, his useless, lazy, layabout sons. How would they manage once he'd gone? He called them to his bedside. Before I die, I must tell you a secret. The lads leant closer. Gold. There's gold in the fields. Where? They said. Which field did you bury it in? It is in the far field to the right. The three lads ran to the fields and set to work, turning over the earth, examining every rock, nothing. When they'd finished, oh well, said one, after all that work, we might as well plant some seed. A few months later they saw it, covering the field, shivering in the wind, the gold. Friends. Two men were walking across a moor when they startled a bear. They turned and fled as quickly as they could, but bears are very fast runners. It was gaining on them. Here was a little tree. One of the men elbowed the other out the way, scrambled up the trunk and sat on the only branch that was out of reach. The other man, he had no choice. He had to lie down under the tree. If he could just stay still, the bear wouldn't eat him because bears don't eat dead meat. The bear stopped beside him. It sniffed him, batted him, pressed its nose up to his ear, then ambled away. When they were safe, the man climbed down from the tree. They continued their journey. As you lay there, said the man from the tree, I swear the bear whispered in your ear. Yes, he did, said the other. Well, what did he say? He said, choose your friends more carefully in future. The gnat. Once upon a time, a lion was striding through the forest when he heard, hey, you. The lion looked about. Here. The lion looked again. Here. The lion squinted, and there was a tiny fly, a gnat. You want to fight? What? Said the lion, are you tired of living? "You think you're so tough," said the gnat. "King of all the beasts, I can take you." "You uppity little speck," said the lion. "Come on then." The gnat went straight for the lion's nose and bit. "Ow!" said the lion. Desperate, he tore the soft skin of his nose with his own claws. "You give up," said the gnat. "Yes," said the lion. "Haha," said the gnat. "I won. I beat the great lion. That makes me tougher than the king of all the beasts. I'm the toughest of them all." And in his delight the gnat did a loop-the-loop straight into a spider's web. Mother Monkey. Once upon a time, Zeus the king of gods decided to offer a prize to the mother with the most beautiful baby. Hermes, the messenger of the gods, flew across the world and told everyone, all people, all animals, all birds were invited. Soon a long line was snaking up the slopes of Mount Olympus towards Zeus' palace, a line of proud mothers. There were deer, peacocks, horses, tigers, humans, wolves. And among them there was a mother monkey. In her arms she was holding a little pink, bald, flat-nosed thing. When the monkey reached the doors of Zeus' palace, all the other gods and goddesses began to laugh, but the mother hugged her little one close. "Zeus can give the prize to whoever he likes, but to me my baby is the most beautiful of them all." Unity. Once upon a time a farmer was tired of his sons arguing, so he called them together and gave each of them a stick. "Break it." The first brother, snap. The second, snap. The third, snap. Now the farmer handed his youngest son 3 sticks. "Break them." The boy grunted and strained, but try though he might, he couldn't. How his brothers laughed. The farmer handed the sticks to his second son. "What about you?" The lad smirked, slammed the sticks against his knee. "Ow." The eldest brother was grinning so much he thought his face was going to split. "Give them here." The oldest brother took the sticks. "Arr." The father took the 3 sticks back. "You are the sticks. By yourselves, each of you is easy to break. But together, nothing can hurt you. Unity is strength. Winter is coming." Once upon a time, there was a grasshopper. All through the summer when the weather was warm and food was plentiful, he loved to make music and leap and dance in the long grass. Sometimes he would meet the ants. They were always scuttling this way and that way, gathering food and carrying it to the storehouses in their anthills. They hardly seemed to notice the sunshine and the flowery fields. "What are you doing, my friends?" he would say. "We are working. Soon the winter will come and food will be scarce. But look, the sun is shining. The summer is all around us. Come and join me. Let's sing, let's dance." The ants took no notice. They put their heads down and lifted their heavy loads. 6 months later the world was white with snow and a bitter wind blew across the fields. The ants in their anthill were nibbling at their stores. Suddenly they heard a voice. "My friends, could you spare me a bite of food? I'm freezing cold and starving with hunger." It was the poor grasshopper. He was ragged and shivering. The ants shook their heads. "If you'd set aside your song and dance and made a store when there was food in plenty, you wouldn't be begging now." The grasshopper replied, "But then I wouldn't have enjoyed the lovely months of summer." And off he went into the bitter cold, laid down and died in his rags.